If adventure has a name, it must be Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
You don't believe me. You will, Dr. Jones.
How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to the Underrated series. I'm Steve Cravens. Joining me for the very first time is Jamie Jirak. Welcome to the show, my dear.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, the honor is mine to have you on the show. We've been trying to do this for a while. I think for the last several months, we've actually tried to do this. But you know what? Like you mentioned earlier off camera, it's probably for the best because Indy has been in the news a lot lately, which brings me to the movie we're going to be talking about, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which was released during the summer of 1984. It is the second film in the Indiana Jones series, but it's actually a prequel. It takes place before Raiders of the Lost Ark. So for a long time, this movie was considered to be by fans to be the black sheep of the original trilogies. Actually, Spielberg himself said that he considered it to be the black sheep of the trilogy because he was never comfortable with the story. He didn't like the darkness of the material. And I guess Raiders was much more to his sensibilities, and Last Crusade was a lot more to his sensibilities because he actually worked in the father aspect with Sean Connery. George Lucas wanted to be darker because after The Empire Strikes Back, he wanted the second Indy film to be like The Empire Strikes Back to Star Wars. So why don't we go into a little bit of personal history here? Where were you the first time you saw it, and how old were you?
I was 5 when my parents showed me the trilogy, and it's funny because over time, I mean to this day, I watch Raiders and Last Crusade all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't watch Temple very often, but I remember specifically of the 3 only watching Temple for the first time because I remember my parents covering my eyes when the heart gets ripped out.
Yeah.
So I have a vivid memory of being 5 and not knowing what was happening in that moment. And even to this day, like watching it recently for the podcast, I was like, oh, the heart, I'm not supposed to watch it. It's too scary. When I was a kid, I was so obsessed with Indiana Jones. To this day, I think it's one of my favorite scores. I think it's my favorite John Williams, I'm the biggest Star Wars fan, but when I hear that Indiana Jones music, it hits different, man. I used to dance around the coffee table listening to the CD when I was little. It's so great.
It is great. And you know what's great is that John Williams actually came up with 2 themes for Indiana Jones. If you think about it, there's like the Raiders theme, there's the da 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 da, and then he has several different themes for Indy. And I mean that just speaks to the genius of John Williams. I mean we can talk about different film composers all we want, but at the end of the day, if you can find someone who comes up with themes as great as John Williams, let me know because I don't think they exist. I mean, listen, my favorite movie of all time is Jaws, and Raiders is my 3rd favorite movie of all time. But that said, I still go with Raiders having the better overall score over Jaws, even though Jaws you can make the argument that's more iconic because it's very simple, It's very iconic. You can make that argument. But nothing gets me going more than hearing the Raiders of the Lost Ark theme.
Yes.
It's amazing.
I always think with Jaws, I always think of Jack Black in The Holiday when he goes 2 notes and you have a villain, and it's so true for the Jaws theme. It's so simple but so perfect.
2 notes and you can make a rubber shark keep people out of the ocean for decades. So listen, I absolutely adore Temple of Doom. I saw it when I was a kid too, and it was the one I was least familiar with because my dad actually owned Raiders and Last Crusade on VHS. He didn't own Temple of Doom. So it took me a while to see Temple of Doom, renting it from Blockbuster. I think it was actually 10 when I saw it. Whereas the other ones, I was much younger. I was like you, probably 5, 6, something like that. And Temple of Doom definitely hits way different because, like I said, it is much darker. Borderline satanic in a couple scenes, really, and in how it bastardizes the Hindu faith, but which we'll talk about later. But I want to talk with you about this briefly. We're going to talk about Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford's portrayal, how he's different from Raiders, and we'll talk about a couple of the other different characters. But as a prequel, does it measure up to Raiders at all for you? Like, does it even hold a candle to Raiders for you? Because I know some people are like, yeah, it doesn't. I
don't think same with Last Crusade. Because honestly, even though Raiders is admittedly better, Crusade's my favorite. I love Crusade.
Yeah.
And Temple, it's just, on so many levels, it's just not as good. And I think one thing that actually bums me out is the way that the other two movies have amazing women in them. And the thing about Kate Capshaw is like everyone hates her. That's like when you pan this movie, you always rag on Kate Capshaw. But I don't think that's really fair because she's just doing what the material has given her. She's actually amazing in this part. And I think that her role has aged almost better than anything because it is like the perfect depiction of a white woman, experiencing other cultures, even though, and we'll talk about this, the culture's all incorrect.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But like, people hate how whiny and loud she is. But to me, I'm like, she's playing white women pretty well. And I think that she gets a bad rap for being terrible in that movie. But again, that's not her fault that's how they wrote the character.
Well, white and privileged too, because remember, she's coming from a lot of money. She's used to performing at these fancy nightclubs and whatnot. Let's go ahead and talk about it because I was going to talk about her performance later, but let's go ahead and talk about that. So Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was not written by Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote the first one. It was written by Gloria Katz and Willard Huyck, who actually wrote American Graffiti for George Lucas. The whole point of the Underrated series is we're talking about movies that either we love or that we like that deserve more attention. But the whole point of it is to also acknowledge the things that fall short for us and also the things that are great. We're going to talk about a lot of things we enjoy about it. No question. That's the whole point of this stuff. But we have to acknowledge the stuff that either doesn't measure up to previous films or just doesn't work. And her character is awful. I mean, it's terribly written. And again, it's not Kate Capshaw's fault, but I'm amazed that to go from Marion Ravenwood, one of my favorite female characters ever in any genre ever. And Karen Allen absolutely killed it. I mean, I can't imagine anybody else in that role. To go from that to this representation, this character is just like, what were you guys thinking? Like, how did you think this was a good idea? To you go from having Indy's equal to someone who, I guess her and Short Round are supposed to be the comedic relief, right? I mean, that's what they're there for, to make the audience laugh and kind of be, the audience in a way kind of being freaked out by all this crazy shit that's happening. But you could have written her so much better. I'm not saying that she has to be Marion Ravenwood, but did she have to scream all the time? Like at everything? So
loud. It's like giving me a headache.
Screeching. I mean, and the best part of the movie is like the last hour, the last 45 minutes are like the best part of the movie, arguably. And she's screaming throughout the whole freaking thing. So it's like I can't even hear myself think when she's talking. So listen, Spielberg's not complaining because at the end of the day, he got a second wife.
He married her.
Yeah. So he's not complaining. I get it. But for us, for fans, and like you said, you mentioned Alison Dooney's portrayal in Last Crusade.
Love her. Even though she's like a Nazi, she's still so sexy and cool. I love a woman who's a villain, and she was one of the first women villains I was ever introduced to, and so I'm such a sucker for her. One thing about I don't know if this is true, but I always assumed it is that the reason they made Temple of Doom a prequel was solely because they didn't want to break up Indy and Marion. That's what I always assumed is the only reason that's why they put it first is because and that's why it bums me out that the third one takes place after because I just want Indy and Marion Endgame so bad, and that's the only thing I like about the fourth movie is that she came back and they got to get married. What fourth movie are you talking about? There is no fourth. Stop! Get out of here. I'm glad the fourth movie exists solely for that reason, and currently. It's not known if Karen Allen's in the fifth one. Right now, she just did some interviews, and literally, I know that they're not allowed to ask if she's in it. So either she's not in it and she's pissed about it, or she has a cameo and they're trying to keep it under wraps. And I really hope that she's going to pop up because that's all I want.
As long as we're talking about movies that don't exist. Well, they did get married at the end of it, so it'd be kind of awkward if she wasn't in it.
I know.
Unless there's a divorce on the horizon. I don't know.
Part of me feels like they're just going to retcon and make that movie not exist.
Well, listen, I'm not, as much as I dislike that movie, I'm not for retconning. I don't believe in that. If you set a course with something, follow it through. Don't do that stuff. Yeah, I mean, listen, but talking about her character, we'll close up. Yes, it's so much weaker than Marion Ravenwood, and I'm glad that at least with Last Crusade, they realized no, if she's going to be the villain, it doesn't matter. We need a strong character to match up with Indy, or else it doesn't. And actually, they wanted to make Indiana Jones more of James Bond in that sense, to be a playboy and to have a different woman in each movie. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of Raiders, if you notice, when Marcus comes to his house, Indiana Jones answers the door in a bathrobe. There's a deleted scene where he was in bed with a woman in his room, and that's why he came in the bathroom. But again, Spielberg was just like, no, we're not gonna. This is too much like James Bond. Like, let's just have him be the professor and the adventurer, not necessarily the slut too. But anyway, let's move on here. We've answered the question. Temple does not match up to Raiders. I'm not going to fight you on that. That is 100% accurate. As much as I love Temple, it does not. Raiders was lightning in a bottle, frankly, for me. I mean, like, how that movie is just so brilliant. How can 40 years later, it's still just as exciting as it was? Listen, I wasn't around when it came out, but I imagine it's just as exciting as it was. My dad says so. He saw it, so he says it's like, listen, when I saw the movie, I knew it was an instant classic. It was never going to go away. Why don't we talk a little about, since we're talking about the positives of the movie, let's talk about some of our favorite scenes in the movie, because this movie is kind of jam-packed with scenes. Do you have a scene, when you think of Temple of Doom, I know your answer. I think I know your answer. But what's the first scene that comes to your mind when you think of Temple of Doom?
You know, it's funny. It's when the real answer is not a positive answer, and it's the dinner. It's the dinner. So, but that is not positive. But I will say positive. I actually really, really love the opening. I love just the style of it. It's unlike anything in any of the Indy movies. And even though Cape Capshaw is her like Mandarin is appalling. I can't tell because I don't speak Mandarin. But like, I love that it opens with like a little musical number because I love musicals, and just everything about that scene is so flashy and fun. And it's definitely a top favorite. I'm trying to think if it's my actual favorite opening of the three, and I don't know if that's true, but I really enjoy.
Well, how can you beat the opening of? I mean, listen. They all three had great intros.
I mean, 3 has the flashback, which is fun.
Fantastic. Rest in peace, River. And Raiders has. Actually, I want to ask you something about. I'll talk about a scene in a little bit, but I was going to ask this later. But since we just came up, I was watching an interview with Steven Spielberg from 2007, and he was talking about Saving Private Ryan, and he was talking about how, when he filmed the Omaha Beach scene, like, they had no idea how it was going to turn out when they were actually filming it. It was only later when they put the edit, like, he realized how strong the footage was actually turning out. And he says that it came to his mind when Raiders was done, there was a DGA screening of it in LA, and he said a very famous director friend came up to him after the movie and said, that really was a fun movie. It was really incredible. But I got to be honest with you, the movie never recovered after the opening 20 minutes. It never recovered. He's like, the whole thing with him going into the temple, the traps, the golden idol, the sand, and then like getting chased by the natives and then flying out in the plane. He's like, that was the boulder. Like, he's like, that was so like unbelievable that, like, as great as the rest of the scenes were, even the opening of the Ark of the Covenant, I was still thinking, I was like, that was unbelievable. That opening 20 minutes was the intro of Indy coming out of the shadows and all that stuff. Yeah,
it's true. There's no better. Nothing beats that. I think I like the temple just because it's like, it's gaudy and flashy and silly, but no, nothing touches Raiders. And Alfred Molina, little baby Alfred Molina.
With the spiders on it, like, they told a funny story about that, how, like, they had the tarantulas on his back and they wouldn't move. And Spielberg's like, well, why aren't they moving? They look fake. He's like, well, you see, those are all males. You got to put a female in there and then they'll all go crazy. So he's like, all right, well, let's put a female in there. So they put the female apparently like right at the base of his neck. And sure enough, they all went scurrying like crazy. Like, they're going over his face. They're going over like his chest. And Spielberg's like, all right, shoot. Alfred, look scared. He's like, I'm scared. Like, screaming. And they couldn't use the footage because he was so terrified. He started running. He was like, do you know how terrifying it is to have tarantulas running across your face, going all over your body? So that's why they keep the shot of just the tarantulas not really moving on his back, because they couldn't use the footage of like it going crazy all over him, which I thought.
Oh, that's so funny.
Funny,
I didn't know that. That's really good. Yeah, I wouldn't have done that. No amount of money would have got me covered in tarantulas.
No, it was like still watching that scene when you see how many are on his back. It's like, no. But the intro to Temple is incredible. It really is incredible. But my question to you is, since we're talking about Raiders just briefly, do you agree with that statement that Raiders never kind of recovers after the first 20 minutes?
I'd never thought of that before. I mean, that's fair. It is definitely like, I don't think there is anything that necessarily matches up with that. But for me, as like because Marion's my favorite part of that movie. It gets better later because she shows up.
Of course.
And I'm trying to really think of like across all three. And I think my favorite of all of it is the third one, the tank scene in the end, before he goes off the cliff and stuff. There's just like it just never stops being fun across. And I don't think the second one has anything equivalent to like a really good action moments. I mean, it's there. They have good ones, but nothing like
there's nothing iconic
that sticks out.
There's nothing iconic that like you can think of.
I just watched it a month ago for this, and I'm like I'm already like, wait, what happened in that movie again?
Well,
like it's memorable.
I agree with that actually, and that's kind of the thing that I want to talk about with the last 45 minutes, because once they get into the actual temple and they see the sacrifice being performed, when they take the heart out, catches on fire, everything after that, when Indy gets possessed by the blood and all that stuff, and then you kind of segue into the crazy. There is nothing iconic about it because it goes so fast. You're going from like him swinging on vines onto like freeing the children, getting into a fight. The minecart chase is actually the closest thing I can think of to being like instantly memorable, because that is actually I love that because it feels like a roller coaster. And David Fincher actually worked on the special effects for that scene when he was 22 years old.
Oh wow!
I'm
learning so much. I love these little pop-up video facts.
There you go. Yeah, actually, if you look in the credits as the movie rolls, you see David Fincher's name there as like a matte artist or whatever. But anyway, so that is the closest thing I can think of in the movie, is the minecart scene actually kind of being like, oh, I can remember that. But after that, it's like, okay, you have the fight on the bridge where he cuts the rope and they all go falling into the gator's mouth.
That's cool. And you know, we're Floridians, so we know the dangers of a good gator. I have a very healthy fear of gators, and so that scene always makes me anxious because I've encountered gators in real life before, and you don't fuck with that.
No, they're dinosaurs still here. Like, I mean, and that's the screwed up thing about alligators. They don't just kill you. They grab you and they drown your ass, and then they go to work on you. That's like, oh my God. They drown you. Like, can you imagine? It's like you're no. Well, anyway, fantastic. So yeah, alligators, Temple of Doom. But you're absolutely right. There's no one scene that really stands out as being iconic. I love him with the machete and then looking back and forth in both directions, and kind of realizing that he's trapped. He's like, oh shit. And like I kind of love that because like how are you going to get out of this? And him cutting the rope and them going down to the gators, that was great. And actually, I don't know about you, but I think Temple of Doom actually has the best ending in terms of being uplifting, with the kids going back to their village, being back with their families.
It is sweet. And you know what's really funny? I was watching it and I remembered this. I remember, this is so weird, but I remember being a kid and watching it with my dad, and I noticed that most of the girls had shirts and the boys had pants. Like all the boys are like pants and shirtless, and all the girls wearing shirts and pantless. And I asked my dad like why that was, and he didn't really want to explain like genitalia to me, and like how, you know, women have, like, girls cover their tops and like all this stuff. And I could tell like he was basically like, my dad said something like, well, it's just because of how they go to the bathroom. And then like, so for a long time, my like concept of gender was like based around how those kids were dressed in the end of that movie, and which is so bizarre now to like look back and like I totally forgot that until I rewatched it, and I was like, oh, that was like my first weird introduction to like like gender, which is really bizarre.
Yeah, well, I actually never really thought about it like that. I mean, I just kind of looked at it like, oh look, but yeah, you're absolutely right. But as far as the ending goes, yeah, I still think that's the most uplifting one, seeing the kids go back to their families. And John Williams' score is fantastic in the background, because the ending to Raiders kind of like mysterious in a way. It's like, oh my God, not only is they put in the ark, but like look at all this other shit the government doesn't want us to see.
Yes.
So it makes you wonder, it's like, what the hell else is in there? And Last Crusade, I mean, obviously with them riding off in the sunset's great and whatnot, but like in terms of like putting you through the ringer, like especially like an adventure as dark as Temple of Doom is, and then having that ending, I thought that was a great touch, especially since like, I mean, the movie was so damn dark and scary for kids, they came up with a PG-13 rating for it.
Yeah,
which is insane.
Which is fascinating.
Like, I think it was Temple of Doom and Gremlins that they were like, listen, we need to have something in between here. So, and listen, when I was out in LA, I saw Raiders in Chicago when we were in, so for for those of you who don't know, which is probably all of you, Jamie and I went to college together, and we went to college in Chicago together. And so saw Raiders for the 30th anniversary at the Music Box. But out in LA, I think this was 2016, we went to the Vista Theater, and they have this thing called the Secret Movie Club, which for those of you out in LA, if you can join it now that things are opening back up again. They do an old movie on 35 millimeter film every Saturday night and at midnight. And one of them we went to go see was Temple of Doom. And it was, it was a pretty good print too. And we went to go see it. And I got to tell you, seeing that movie in 35 with a sold out crowd, I never realized, even as a kid, just how fucking dark that movie. Like, I mean, you're sitting there and you're watching it, like, especially the scene where Mola Ram's like taking the heart out. I was like, fuck. I mean, I remember turning to, well, she was my girlfriend at the time. My wife, and I was like, this, Jesus, like, this is pretty hardcore shit. Like you're watching it on your TV, you're just like, oh, look, he's pulling the heart out. That's cool. But like seeing on the,
it's also like gross. I like again, like we know like the dinner scene is so beyond racist, but also I'm like terrified of bugs and snakes and all that stuff, and I hate that scene so much because it's so disgusting. And like put a pin in the racism. It looks really good the way that they make all that stuff. Like it all looks so gross and realistic, and it like makes my stomach churn. But like in a way that's impressive. They did a good job making all that shit look so disgusting.
Well, you know what the monkey brains are made of?
No.
Custard ice cream, apparently. Like there's like custard and strawberry, apparently. So like I think the actor who played Short Round was like, you know what? It looked disgusting, but trust me, it was hard not to eat. It was really, really good. I'm
surprised they don't have that like at Disney.
Well, yeah, I guess they could. Hey, you want chilled monkey brains? Yeah, that'll be a hot seller. Especially after we talk about how racist it is.
Yeah, that's fair.
But actually, since I mentioned him briefly, obviously Short Round replaces Sala as the sidekick. And I love Short Round in this movie. He's adorable. He's funny. And again, it's weird that we didn't get him in. I mean, listen, I know it's a sequel, but since they're deeming it a prequel, that he doesn't show up at all in Raiders. So like, what'd you do? You just left him in India in the village? Like, what'd you do?
Abandoned that kid.
Yeah. We didn't see him in Last Crusade. So where the hell, what happened, man? Like, did you leave him there? Like, what creep? But I love his character. I love the comedic relief that he brings. And obviously I love him in the Goonies too, but yeah.
I love the Goonies. So.
Yeah, he's great. And actually, real quick fun fact, we're doing the fun facts here. Indiana Jones is named after George Lucas's dog was Indiana. Short Round was named after Gloria Katz and Willard Hike's dog Short Round, and Willie was named after Spielberg's dog Willie. So all three characters are named after their dogs.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so we talked about, the minecart scene. We talked about all of the great stuff that's in it. And again, like, I know a lot of people they still don't care for the movie. Like, even with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, they still say that Temple of Doom is not their favorite just because it is darker. There's no Nazis. There's no, I'm glad I caught myself right here. Real quick before we go into other stuff. Obviously the MacGuffin of the Lost Ark of the Covenant is like, oh, this is amazing. The Holy Grail is amazing. These Sankara stones, I don't know. They don't have near the mystique, the allure. Like, to be honest with you, I'm going to admit this right now. I love Temple of Doom. I really do. What the hell do these stones do? Like, what are they? I mean, I know you put them together and they glow, but what the fuck are you doing with these stones? Like, what?
I couldn't tell you.
Right? Like, what's going on here? And Mola Ram is like, okay, like, I get it. With the Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark, oh, the Ark's going to make us invincible. Like, any army that carries the Ark is invincible. We can lay waste to entire regions. The Holy Grail, dickhead, what's his name? Donovan wants to live forever, I get it. Like, those are things I get. Like, you want to live forever. Good for you, man. Like, you want to lay waste to the free world. Good for you. Like, but what the hell are you doing with these stones? Like you take them from the village. Their village is dying. And you want to get back to the British, apparently. You want to, like, kick out the British Empire from your country, but these stones are going to help you do that. How? We're going to start talking about the weaknesses. We might as well just talk about this. That is a very, very weak MacGuffin compared to the Lost Ark of the Covenant and to the Holy Grail. I know you're going to agree with that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
You're calling them what they're called. And like, if you would have asked me, I couldn't have told you. And I've seen that movie a million times because even at its worst, like, yeah, it's weak and it's racist, but it's, it's Indiana Jones. It's still entertaining. It's still Harrison Ford being sexy and
with a shirt off, by the way, with a shirt off, for the first time, worked very hard to do that. So let's appreciate that. But yeah, let's okay. So again, this is the underrated series. I love this movie. I've talked about the stuff that we love, that's great. But we also have to acknowledge some stuff about that either doesn't work, is outdated and whatnot. Just mentioned that the Sankara stones is kind of like a what the fuck kind of thing, because I could make a whole episode about that and how it doesn't really work. But anyway, we're gonna stay on the topic here. You brought this up. I'm glad you brought this up because, to be honest with you, being a fan of this movie since I was a kid, you never really pay attention to these things. And I have a quote from Spielberg that we're going to talk about that I think is kind of alarming. The way it portrays Indians and Indian culture and the Hindu religion is actually kind of disgusting because, again, it came out in 1984. You're absolutely right. 37 years old, just turned 37 years old a couple of weeks ago. That's really not that long ago to justify bastardizing an entire culture just for the sake of entertainment.
Mm-hmm. And, and it's like, you're going to use these people and these culture and just like make shit up and make them so like weird and gross and like, dumb. And it's just, I can't imagine being an Indian person and watching that movie and just how, I don't know. It's just so offensive. But like, it's there are so many movies from that time that treated other cultures like that, and you can dismiss it, but I think it's safe to still enjoy a movie like that, but you have to be aware of these issues now. And like you said, like we were kids. Of course sure. That didn't enter our brains.
For sure.
And I think it's okay to still enjoy watching the movie as long as you have a healthy understanding that it's not okay to do those things.
But it again, okay, yeah, we're kids, right? We don't really pay attention to that stuff. That's fine. Obviously, being older these days, you realize, and you bring up the point. What was the reasoning? What was the logic behind doing this? Because, for example, the goddess of Kali, for example, they make it out to be like some sort of demonic, satanic idol that these people are worshiping. If you do your research, Kali is the exact opposite of what they're portraying in this movie. So my question would be I can't ask them because they've passed away. I would love to ask them if they were still here. Why, especially since they claimed in the documentary that they were fascinated by Indian culture. They traveled in India. They spent a lot of time there. They absolutely love the country. If that's the case, then why the hell did you do this? Why not just come up with like a fictional deity that they could worship? Why not portray this culture as something that's, as people that aren't dirty and filthy, but, not necessarily romanticize them, but just show them as they actually are, not make up bullshit about them. That would have been a lot more interesting.
I feel like they probably, at the time, which, ignorance isn't a good excuse, but I'm sure that they didn't even think about it, which is not okay. I'm sure they were just like, oh, let's pull some of these true facts and turn it into fiction. It's Indiana Jones. It's still fantasy. It's an adventure movie. We don't have to be accurate. And, they're just not considering how it affects people and how, it's not, you just don't, they don't think about that. And I think that's one of the good things about today, because I think up until a few years ago, things like that still weren't being thought of. Not as bad as it was in the 80s, but I think only in the last 5 years have movies been more conscious about how people are portrayed, which I think is nice. Of course, I absolutely agree with that. Right. Looking back on, listen, I love the movie as you. So one thing that I will say that maybe I can defend why they did this, or maybe explain why they did it. Listen, we've seen whatever your creed is, even if you don't have a religion, whatever it is, we've seen plenty of people take either words from the Bible, the Quran, whatever, and bastardize it to fit their narrative, to fit their agenda. We've seen plenty of people throughout human history do this, no matter what it is, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, whatever it is.
So maybe we're supposed to take it that Mola Ram is taking something in the Hindu beliefs and bastardizing it just the way that, certain people do. Maybe that's it. I don't really buy into that. I'm trying to come up with a reason why they would have done that. Why two people who claimed they love that culture would do something like that. But anyway, all the things being said, I mean, listen, it doesn't really age well in that respect. It's definitely kind of a black eye to it because and again, you mentioned the dinner scene. I actually met several Indians out in LA working on various productions, and this movie would always come up. And they would say, like, that scene is a fucking joke because nobody eats that shit in India. We don't revel in putting live snakes down our throat and eating monkey brains and all right, and we don't have eyes in our soup. Like, we don't have that shit. Like, it's kind of like, like you're it's what Hollywood has always done, and it's just kind of mocked people that are different from what you see in these two screens. And it's kind of well, if we're being honest, but it's, again, like you said, it hasn't aged well, but it doesn't, I feel bad saying this, but like it really doesn't deter my enjoyment of the movie.
I think that's okay. I really do. I mean, especially we have nostalgia for these movies, and it's so hard to, like, I'm the biggest sucker for nostalgia that's ever existed. So, like, if there's something I loved as a kid, it is unlikely that I don't still love it today. Yeah. And like in Temple of Doom is definitely, like I said, like I watch Raiders and Last Crusade all the time, so I don't have the same kind of love for Temple, but I mean, there will be many more times in my life where I watch it. This wasn't the last time I'm ever going to watch that movie. Yeah. So, and I think that's, I think that's okay. If like you were to have children, I'm sure you would show them the movie. You just like teach them. Yeah, what's wrong about it.
Yeah, exactly. And it is kind of sensitive because I feel like, Indians are one of those minority groups that don't really get a whole lot of representation and don't get a whole lot of people to speak up. I mean, they can speak up for themselves. They don't need people to speak up for them, but it's always nice to have support. And when you say like, hey, that's not really a great representation of who you are and who your culture is. You don't need us to do it, but it's always nice to have allies, I guess. But anyway, so those are the shortcomings of the movie for sure. There's other shortcomings. I mean, again, we talked about Willie Scott, like how they wrote her. We talked about the dinner scene. We talked about, all that different stuff. And again, I'm going to go ahead and say this though, and this is probably where you and I will, not probably, I know this is where we're going to differ. I love all three movies. Notice how I said all three. And I kind of like Temple of Doom more than Last Crusade. I know. Let me explain myself.
I'm offended.
Let me explain myself. I love Sean Connery. I love the movie. They're all three are 10 out of 10s for me. They're flawless. Okay, well, Temple of Doom's not flawless, but the experience of watching it was flawless. The nostalgia is flawless. You know what I mean? We've just acknowledged that this movie has faults, but I can still look back on it and be like, I can't really fault it because, again, that movie brings me so much joy that the experience of it's 10 out of 10. If I were to look at it, and judge it appropriately, it'd probably be a 7.5 or an 8. But through rose-colored glasses, it's a 10 out of 10. It's an amazing movie, but there's something about the last 45 minutes of that movie, how exhilarating it is. And just when Indiana Jones does come back and he grabs Short Round and says, "I'm back, kid," and he gives him that little wink, and he starts punching him, and then Short Round gives him the hat back, and the music plays and he puts the hat back. Something about that just hits me different. I guess maybe because I always imagine myself being a sidekick on his adventures, like kind of like Short Round, that movie kind of stands out more to me. You know what I mean? Like I always picture myself as Short Round, like as a little kid going on an adventure with Indiana Jones. I think that's why it speaks more to me than Last Crusade does.
I think Last Crusade's always been my favorite because it's so funny. I mean, there are so many funny moments in that movie, and the action's so good. I love the end. I love him doing all the obstacles, and just like the stakes are so high with Sean Connery like laying there dying, and even though like Elsa's bad when he like still tries to save her, and just like the glove slip, there's just like all of it is so intense. And even when they're in like the underwater area, and the boat chase, oh my god, just that movie is nonstop perfect.
The catacombs, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It really, and it's obviously it's much closer to Raiders than Temple is. Mm-hmm. You got the Nazis coming back and whatnot, and the beautiful locations, like, filming in Venice, for example, like you said, the boat chase in the canals. Amazing stuff. I think this is a perfect way to kind of segue into what we hope for the real fourth movie that's coming out next year. All right, you know what? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and agree with you because I love the positive vibes. I'm going to go ahead and say that, yes, the great thing about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was Marion Ravenwood and seeing Karen Allen again. That was fantastic. I'm not going to say anything else about that movie.
I think that's all that matters. For me, that's all I care about.
That's all. I'm certainly not going to talk about Shia LaBeouf swinging on those vines with those CGI monkeys. I'm not going to talk about.
I hate CGI animals in anything. CGI animals in I've been watching like a lot of those live action Disney movies, and finally, and God, I hate them. And it's like whenever a CGI animal pops up, I'm just taken completely out of the movie. I can't stand it.
So we've talked about Temple of Doom. We talked a little bit about Last Crusade, Raiders of the Lost Ark. In reality, this should be kind of like a retrospective of all three. But so Indiana Jones 5 is filming currently. Spielberg has not returned. It's James Mangold directing. What are you expecting out of it, if anything? I mean, I feel like this should have came out years ago if they were going to do it.
It's crazy. When I've been working at my job at comicbook.com since October of 2018, and I remember the first article I ever wrote about was like something about Indy 5, and it's like it just kept getting pushed back, and I can't believe it's finally filming. It took forever, and I think I mean Logan's amazing. If anyone knows how to direct an older character who's been around for a long time, I think he's proven himself. Sure. And I hope that they don't get, like you said, like too CGI heavy and all that. I have no idea what to expect because I'm curious when it's going to take place, because if we're going off the math of how many years between Crystal Skull and now, it would technically take place in 1970, but I think that's bizarre. But the pictures of him on set, he has dots on his face. So are they de-aging him for the whole movie?
Probably, yeah.
So is it going to be, that was 57. Maybe this is going to be like 65 or something. I'm just totally guessing, but I'm really curious about the time. But like plot wise, I have a feeling that like Shia LaBeouf, like him having a son, is not even going to be mentioned, which is fine. I don't care about that either way. I don't hate it as much as you do. I have no like real strong feelings either way. I really only care about Marion. Give me Marion, and that's all I care about. Even if it's a 5-minute cameo, just let her show up. I really wish that. One thing that really pissed me off actually about Crystal Skull is that they just killed off Sean Connery when they. It
was just one thing that pissed you off.
I rewatched it recently, and it's like, it's whatever. I really don't have strong feelings either way. It just exists. But it's a bummer that they killed off Connery because he could have been a part of that, but now he is actually gone, and that makes me sad.
Yeah. Apparently they wanted to have him in a cameo in Kingdom of that movie, and he turned him down. He said for two reasons. One, he was having too much fun in retirement. And two, he's like, we would be cheating the audience if I came back just for a cameo and didn't go on the adventure. Mm-hmm. He's like, because, no, he said like Last Crusade, I came on the adventure. This time, like, what, you're just going to see me at home or like teaching somewhere, and then I'm not going to come on the journey. Like, that's not who the character is anymore. So he's like, that's why I'm not going to do it. So, and I'm kind of with you. Like, that's another flaw of the movie. It's one thing to not have him in it. Did you really have to kill him off?
You did not have to.
You didn't have to.
I've always found it so funny that Sean Connery is only 10 years older than Harrison Ford.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. And I guess
I've always found that to be very funny.
That is funny. Yeah, I forgot about that. I would actually love to see Sala back. I would love to see Sala back. That would be John. I mean, if they can, and it's not, the whole point is not just to have like nostalgia. I get that, but like, it's nice to have some sort of continuity. With some of the characters, he's a fan favorite, and bring back Short Round.
Is Brody dead in real life?
He died of AIDS in 1992.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
He died of AIDS.
Oh, that bums me out. Brody was my favorite. I love Brody.
That's why in that fourth movie, they have the statue of him where they crash into it. And it's in memory of Marcus Brody. And I'm not sure if that's the best way to pay tribute to a guy, that just have him get crashed and have his head fall into your lap. That's kind of dumb.
I don't even remember that.
I remember. I'm Irish. I don't forget. But listen, just as long as I'm with you, keep the CGI to a minimum. If you absolutely must have it, fine. But you made it work with the first 3 movies without CGI. Somehow, some way you did it.
Practical effects are so much better.
They age better too.
And it's like, it's real, it's tangible, you know it's there. It's just so much more impressive to me.
And actually, real quick tidbit on James Mangold. I think he's one of the most underrated directors around. I think he does he's not really, I wouldn't call him like, he's not Stanley Kubrick or anything like that, but like he's so good at what he does, and he does so many different genres very well. I did a video for this series for the Wolverine. I think the Wolverine's insanely underrated. It's underrated as hell. I love the way he filmed Japan was fantastic. Now you want to talk about showing a different culture with respect and really classing it up and showing us, making someone feel like an outsider without making the people around him come off as total idiots. That movie does it very well. 3:10 to Yuma, amazing remake. Walk the Line.
I have not seen 3:10 since theaters, but I loved it. It's been, God, I was probably we were in high school when that movie came out, I think.
We were.
So I have not seen it in a long time, but I'm not a Western person, but if you were to ask me my favorite Western, I might say, and I should rewatch that.
It's very good. It holds up. It's a great remake. So anyway, that is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I hope you enjoyed our retrospective. And again, it might have sounded like a little bit more negative in there this time. Listen, if you love something, you love it for its flaws as well. We both love Indiana Jones. I mean, listen, it's a great thrill ride of a movie. It really is. And it still holds up, I think. The 4K Blu-rays just came out last week, and I watched all 4 of them in 4K. They went back and meticulously cleaned it up and had the Dolby Vision. Temple of Doom looks unbelievable, especially in the temple.
I should get those because my DVDs are old. Those are old.
Please upgrade. Yeah, you owe it to yourself to upgrade. And it looks fantastic. So that 4K Blu-ray set is out. You can also get it on iTunes or wherever you get your movies from. But anyway, Jamie, where can people find you?
I write articles and things on comicbook.com. I'm on Twitter and Letterboxd, Jamie Cinematics. I'm really obsessed with Letterboxd these days. So if you want to see what I'm watching, follow me there.
There you go. And for me, you know where to find me, right on here. And also for those of you out there too, I'm also a huge sports fanatic. I like to give my website a plug now that it's completely finished. HighVoltageSportsBetting.com. Sell you sports picks for all the 4 major American sports. You're probably thinking, why are you doing this on a movie video? Because I can. So if you have any interest in that, go ahead and hit us up there. And again, thank you for watching the Underrated series with us. I hope you enjoyed our retrospective, and give Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom one more try if you haven't seen it in a while. Still holds up and it's worth a look. But anyway, Jamie, thank you for joining me once again. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.